Well, hello there. My name is Void Ghost, and today I would like to answer a question. Are corporations evil? I mean, everything you buy in the store, you wear, you use, your car, basically, pretty much everything you encounter in your daily life is made by some sort of corporation or by a factory that the corporation owns. But you constantly hear about pollution, for example, right? And you think about all those companies producing all that stuff that's, for example, meant to break down in a very short amount of time. Sometimes it's one used plastic cup or a straw or shaving razor, and you use it and it's useless after one use, and well, you throw it away. But that's just one thing. You also hear about well, mistreating employees. So, for example, people are um, made to work more and more, even if they wouldn't want to normally, but they're afraid of losing their job. And there are other things. I'm not going to list them all because I could be talking here for quite a while, but you get the thing I'm talking about, right? Corporations have this bad vibe about them, some more than others. So, for example, big pharma, yeah, quite often people think did these drugs or medicine, did it actually cause something more? It goes like that. And even if there's no basis for that, people generally don't trust those big institutions. Is there a cause to not trust them? Are they evil? Well, let's answer that. So first of all, what does a corporation want? What is its objectives are, right? Um, well, it's there to make money. And by make, I mean earn. So, how do you earn money as a corporation? Well, you either produce stuff or your parts of your corporation do that. So, the factories you own, the smaller companies that your company owns, etc., they make stuff and you sell that stuff. That's one of the ways to make money. And others, well, you can have some sort of service that you provide, like internet, for example, right? You got your local internet provider, that's also a company, and it doesn't have to produce anything, but then again it has to have some investments, etc. So that's all that the company needs and wants, and theoretically does. It tries to make a profit. Now, does it actually do anything else? Does it have a mission? Well, its statutory act, that's the founding act of the company, um, tells us what it is all about. And it will almost always say just one thing: this company is about earning money, making a profit. That's it. It doesn't want to help people, it doesn't want to do bad stuff to people, of course. It's just that bad stuff done to people might occur if, well, it's aggressively making that money. Now, let me give you a small example in this area. Bill Gates, the director of Microsoft. Uh, he left at one point, then came back. But years ago, I don't know, it was 8 years or 10 years ago, he was in an interview and he stated that Microsoft's mission is to bring technology to people. And that is, of course, well, a lie, basically. Maybe he didn't think it through. Maybe he just said it knowing that it's not true. But why isn't it true? Isn't Microsoft expanding technology? Well, yes, but the only reason for that is because it has competition. And that competition is going to get ahead of Microsoft if Microsoft is not going to invest some money, and it's pretty serious money, uh, into development. So it can't just sell the same product over and over. It has to make new advances in technology that it's trying to sell. And if it doesn't get ahead of the competition, then the competition might have something better for people, or better and cheaper. And if you might remember um, a situation with consoles, the PlayStation 4, I think, and the Xbox One. There was this difference of about $100 in the price. That is, the Xbox One was more pricey, and in the results, well, the the company, Microsoft, that is, had to lay off some employees. I think it was in the thousands. So, as you see, if you fail to get ahead of the competition, then you might actually pay for it by your company's prosperity. But all that would not happen if there was no competition. So if some alien race comes tomorrow and says, you know what, we just observed you, and because we have such superior technology, we're going to make changes right now. We just leave one company in each area, and in the area of generating computers, we're going to just leave Microsoft. So what would Microsoft do? Well, the very next day, they would probably stop all development on new technologies, unless they would kind of have to rethink what they're going to do from now on. But that's the thing. They develop new technologies because there's competition they need to get ahead of. That's it. Now, let's look at the typical company. And I mean something that has stock, right? So it's on the stock market. It has some stock, and that's the entity we're going to be looking at now. It has employees, right? Regular employees, and I mean that includes lower and middle management. So even if someone's in charge of 20 or 30 people, they basically are a regular employee. And what does that mean? Well, there's a few things we should point out, but first let's think of what are the employees' goals. Well, let's say you're employed in a company, right? What do you want? Well, you want to get paid, right? As much as it's possible for the company to pay you. And do you want to work your ass off? I mean, probably not. You're going to want to work as little as possible for that money, right? I mean, if there's a correlation between how much you work and you earn, that is, they pay you by the hour, then okay, you want to pull longer hours perhaps. But if you just have a set amount of time you're going to be spending in your job, and you can take it easy, or you can just run around and do everything that needs to be done, well, then you probably want to take it easy. You probably want to, do stuff, sure, but just enough so they don't fire you. That's the typical attitude. And do you really care for the company? I mean, look, if it's going to fail and go bankrupt, you're going to go work somewhere else, right? Of course, now you have a job, and in the event of bankruptcy, well, then you, for a small time, a small amount of time, you wouldn't have a job. That's a problem, sure. So the well-being of the company is kind of important to you, but just in that um, amount that doesn't totally collapse. Or if it starts to collapse, then maybe they won't fire you in particular. And that's it. And every employee pretty much thinks the same way. Now, we should note that 10% of a company's employees do 90% of the work. Now, that means you got these key employees. For one reason or another, maybe they have a set of skills, maybe they just feel they have to put in the hours, the work, whatever the reason, they are doing most of the job. That's it. Okay. And well, and these individuals, on one hand, you could say they maybe not care for the company that much more, but they definitely do much more for it. This might be important later on, but I think that establishes what a typical company employee wants. Now, what does a typical company employee matter in the grand scheme of things? Well, he can't really affect the company, right? Unless he sabotages it somehow. But the fact is he employed, or maybe someone takes his place. If you have thousands of employees, it just doesn't matter. He's a clog in the machine, sure, but a replaceable clog, probably easily replaceable, unless he's among the 10%. But we're going to get to that in a moment. Now, let's skip to the guys in charge, like the board of directors. Now, what do they want? They have good jobs, right? And they earn a lot of money. Now, limiting the amount of stuff they do is probably off the table, because you got in that position, you have your duties, you have to work a certain amount. There's no avoiding that. But yeah, they want to keep their job, and that is the objective here, right? Now, do they want the company to prosper? Well, sure, that won't be bad, right? But if they have to choose the prosperity of the company or keeping their job, they would choose the job. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, I'll get to that in a moment too. But first, who do they respond to? Who's above them? Well, the shareholders, those people that actually have the company stock. They can technically fire these directors. There are actually specifics depending on the country, etc., the exact type of company too. But you can say that a director that is employed and doesn't have a piece of the company himself, because sometimes you're going to have this. Someone has 5% or 10, maybe more of the company, and he's gonna put himself in the board of directors to have a direct role in running it. Now, let's say that is not the case in this situation. Well, we have people that aren't the owners of the company but get money from it as long as they are employed by it and they want to stay employed by it. It's a good job. Now, what do the shareholders want? Well, they must want the company to prosper, right? I mean, it's um, it's how they will get more money because the stock they own will rise in prices. Well, yeah, the price of the stock will rise in certain cases, but how long will they actually be the shareholders of this particular company? You see, if you're a player on the stock market and one of the serious ones, you usually don't invest the money you have for too long. You want a short term investment, really. So you buy some stock, it goes up, and you sell it. And that's it. If you can make it in a very short amount of time, even if the profit is pretty small on each piece of stock separately, the amount of money you're going to invest is so big that you're going to actually have a huge profit, even if it's at 1% or 2 or 3. If you can do that in a week, whoa, okay? Imagine a huge sum and 3% in 1 week. That's huge. That's enormous. Of course, more realistically, it's probably going to be an investment for a month, 3 months, 6 months, any longer than that, and that person or entity, because this can be a company owning stock in another one. Okay, um, so this entity will probably be someone interested in actually staying put and controlling the said company by owning its stock. So the biggest players on the stock market buy and sell, and they always want to sell for more than they bought for a bigger price, right? So what about the next guy who bought the stock from them? Well, he wants the stock to rise, right? Because he wants to do exactly the same. He wants to sell it for a higher price. Now, how the hell do you make the stock rise? Well, as a director, you're going to have a few options here. Let's name them. So, the first and utmost would be to expand the company. Now, this is easier said than done, but there's pretty much always room for some sort of expansion, unless you're in a situation where you pretty much need to save the company instead of expanding. But what can you do? Well, for example, if you have a set of warehouses or supermarkets, right? Your company has supermarkets in different cities. You can make another one in, say, a smaller city, or maybe another one in the same city where you have one. But you see what you're doing here, right? You probably occupied the best places already, and now you want to expand somewhere else. Of course, this is very different for a new company because it just starts out and it can go places. But after a while, you fill those positions you could have taken, and now if you just go and start building up um, let's say more supermarkets, then you're gonna try to sell stuff to people that might not have the money, or there just might be very few people in the area, or there might be competition. And that means you're gonna struggle with each new investment, and you can actually incur losses instead of profits. So expansion, yeah, it's good on paper, but it's limited. So what are the other ways to make or save some money? Well, you could cut corners. What does that mean? Well, if you lower the production costs of your goods, there you go. How do you do that? Well, for example, you could get the materials you use for a cheaper price. This would probably mean that those will be of a lesser quality. Now, if your company doesn't rely on quality, because it might have a product that is famous for its quality, and if that's the case, well, you're not gonna go and cheapen it, right? But if you actually went the other direction and made some very cheap stuff, now you're going to make it even cheaper and you're going to lower the cost. And it's going to be, well, it's going to fall apart even sooner than the products you made before. But in effect, you're going to save some money on the products you have to buy to make your products from. Yeah, that's one of the ways, but you can do other corner cutting, sorry, um, stuff. For example, you can, if let me just give you a real life example. Okay, there was this factory in the United States, I believe, and it produced toxic waste as a byproduct of its production. And then it took that toxic waste and it dumped it every day in a nearby river. Now you could say, well, wait a second, doesn't that incur a fine or something? Well, yes, yes. Every day it was fined $3,500. So how much would it cost for it to do something, safe with that toxic waste? 10,000. So the calculation was pretty simple. You dump it into the river and you save 6,500. There you go. Economy 101. And yeah, uh, and you might think, okay, wait, that's the evil. I was asking right in the beginning. You're basically consciously polluting the neighborhood. You're making people sick or die. And that's evil, right? You can't do that. And, that's your choice. Well, kind of. You see, imagine two factories. Now, one does what I said, and the other has the same production, but tries to be the good guy. And it spends 10,000. That means it loses 6,500 a day compared to this one, which means that this one can lower the price on its product, for example, and its product will be sold, and this, well, is going to be of the same quality, but unfortunately, it's going to be more pricey. It's going to have a higher cost just because they wanted to be the good guys. So a company, you see, is kind of like a slug going along a leaf. It eats the leaf. It feeds on the leaf. Does it hate the leaf? No. Does it love the leaf? No. It has no feelings for the leaf. And if you want to do something about that slug eating your leaf, well, then you have to either poke it or burn it because the only thing it understands is pain. And in the case of a company, the only thing that will block it from doing stuff that hurt the population is hurting it more than the profit it gains. Now, one of the ways that can happen that is a company gets hurt is PR, public relations. If everybody knows that this company is evil and everybody thinks, oh my goodness, no, not these guys, and you see their products and you don't want to buy them, ah, now they have losses and now they have to do something like make some fundraiser, donate some money to orphans or I don't know, cancer patients. Basically, they have to mm, look as these saintly fellows that kind of give some of their money to others. Of course, they do that only because they absolutely have to, not for any other reason. Of course, you could say, they're greedy bastards, but you have to understand that the directors in charge, as I said, they respond, they answer to the shareholders, and the shareholders don't want the directors just giving away their money, right? Because it's their company, it's the shareholders' company, not the directors. So if some director say, hey, let's be the very, very best guys and just give away, I don't know, 10%, 20% of the company. Well, he would be fired and probably criminally charged too, right? So, yeah, the only reason a company that's mission is profit, because theoretically you have nonprofit organizations, mainly you have foundations. Now, these work in a specific way. You see, you have to invest 10% of what you earn into some sort of charity, right? So you have to help someone or do stuff that's good and honest. And you have to put 10% of your earnings there, but you pay smaller taxes. So it kind of evens out. For example, the Nobel Foundation, the Nobel Prize for all those people who made brilliant scientific discoveries. Well, it's funded by the corporation or the foundation that was founded um, by Nobel, who this guy invented dynamite, I think, and he didn't like the reputation of being the guy who blows stuff up. So on his deathbed or close to the end of his life, he basically made this foundation of, well, donated all his money to it, and it functions to this day. But going back to typical companies, what other ways do they have to say save some money? Well, we talked about cutting corners. Then there's the competition, right? I'm already mentioned there's competition, but you could kind of outsmart the competition, yes, but you also can destroy the competition. And how would you do that? Well, you have a number of ways. First of all, you can have someone in your pocket. And this might not seem like a legal thing, but if you say funded the campaign of a local politician, then you could assume that that politician is going to be on your side, right? So your company might assume that after they donated some money to that campaign or basically funded the campaign in its whole, and then this person got to be, I don't know, mayor, senator, whoever is in power in the region. Now he's not gonna want to do stuff against you, and he's gonna help you out actually. So in a situation where there's a good spot for, let's say, a supermarket, and your company can get that spot, or another company can get that spot, and the city has to decide. Well, then the mayor says, oh, I considered all the facts. which is cha-ching money you got for the campaign. Really, he's not going to say that loud. No, 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 no. And then, of course, your company, if you're the guys who pay them, will get that the placement. That's good placement, right? So that's one of the ways. But you got others. Well, let's face it, industrial espionage. Remember that, yeah, PlayStation against Xbox One thing? Well, it felt as if Microsoft didn't know that the PlayStation is going to have such a low cost. If they would have known that, what would they do? Well, they could have tried to lower it somehow, whatever way. But if you have time, if you know what the competition is doing, what they're developing, what their work is on, I mean, that's not really deep knowledge, right? That's superficial knowledge. You just know that they are about to develop this kind of technology. And if you imagine that you're going to place something on the market, but it's weaker technology, then it's not going to work, right? They're going to be just after you or even just before you, and then they will sell their product and no one will buy your product because it's not going to be good enough. So now you have to make decisions. Of course, this can go deeper and you can actually kind of steal what they have done. Now, that's definitely illegal, but you know, it's a brutal thing, the corporate sector, and either you're on top or you're kind of going downwards usually in any specific area. Um, Now, what other ways do you have to destroy your competition? Well, you can make dumping prices. That means you move into a region and your supermarket, if we're going to stay with that example, is going to have a lot of products that are already sold in the area. So let's say it's a small city, but you can buy anything right now in that city. And now you want to sell your products. But why would people come and buy them from you? Well, if they have a shop nearby and they have to walk or drive towards your supermarket, that's let's say it's in the center of the city, most of them will say, okay, I'll just go to the smaller shop, right? But what if you lower the prices so much that you basically make no profit or you actually incur losses ready, but whatever they have, you have at half the price. Now, even if it's groceries, people will probably drive to your supermarket, buy everything they want at your place and not at the small shop on their street because they can, buy a lot and just eat that for a few days at least. And what effect is that going to have on those small shops? They will lose all their clients, or most of them. Sometimes someone was going to just say, whatever, and going to buy something from them because they're very close to him. But that's still not going to be enough. They will go bankrupt. And soon after you arrive there and start to sell at these prices, they're going to be out of business. You're going to be in place. So, mission accomplished, I guess. And now, all those things can happen. You can do them. But there's a limit on that, too. I mean, if it's a small city, um, you know that if you are the sole provider of some sort of goods. Again, let's go with the supermarket. You're the only supermarket in it. It's a tiny city, very tiny. You're gonna have just some profits, maybe. So, and they have some shops, of course, around the city. Eliminating them and installing your establishment there, it's not worth it, really. That's the limit of our expansion, and all those tricks you can do, well, they're going to be pointless. In the end, they're probably going to you're going to lose money over them instead of gaining more anything, money or people to sell your stuff to. It's not going to work because you reach the limit. And now, even cutting corners is not, well, you just can't cut more corners. Or maybe if you do, you're just going to go into very risky territory. So, what else can you do? Well, you can squeeze your employees, by which I mean, well, you could try to lower what they earn, but that's very risky because it's very obvious. And any other employee that could be a replacement for those who leave is going to see that, well, you're paying less than the competition, right? Why would he come and work for you unless he has no choice or it's a temporary job because they're full staffed and you're not. Um, So a much better option for you is actually trick them. You see, you're gonna work them much more than they expect. And let me give you a few real life examples. Let's not mention where they actually come from, but for example, some stores might have a section where about 10 people should work, but they will employ only four. And the person in charge will try to juggle these people. Sometimes someone gets sick and it's a tragedy. But the store indeed will save some money. It's not a big amount usually, but it piles up over time, of course. And what else we can do? Well, you can try to cut their bonuses, or for example, and of course announce that, oh, you know what, we're gonna like shape it down, but instead of this, you sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. We're gonna say that you're honestly gonna get half of that always, right? And or something like that. You basically are a bastard to your employees. That's what you are. And that earns you, well, some money. And in effect, it can make a lot of people leave if they have somewhere to go. Now, the thing is, as I mentioned before, 10% of the company's employees do 90% of the work. If these cuts are aimed at, unfortunately, those people, then the company might be, well, dead already and not know it, or the shareholders might not know it because they don't see who is important and who's not. But the fact is that the vital personnel might leave, and, well, it's a downward spiral, basically, from then on. So what's the last resort? Well, you could downsize. And when do you do that? Well, you got this director or a board of directors, and they get to this point, or maybe let me put it like this: you got a new guy in charge, okay, and his predecessor basically did everything. He cut corners, he squeezed employees, and now the company's on the edge. And now the new guy comes and says, "What the hell am I supposed to do?" I need to increase profits at the end of the year. I need to earn more than the year before. And I don't see any possibility of doing that. Now, I could say, okay, I'm going to make some investments that are going to profit us in 2 years free. They're going to stabilize the situation. They're going to push the company forward. But the shareholders don't want to wait 2 or 3 years. They want to see an increase in profits now, right now, or I lose my job. So what do I do? Well, and this is the downside. You basically take your company and look at the least productive elements, things you can kind of sell or close or get rid of. Sometimes that will sell you money. Sometimes, you know, selling, for example, a piece of land where you had one of your supermarkets that had no profits will actually get you some money in the short run. And of course, you can fire people. You can fire employees, thousands even if you need to. You try to get rid of those that you don't necessarily need. And of course, this will put more work and more strain on those who are left behind. So the objective here is not to limit your business as a whole, but to limit the personnel and the assets you need to put in to make it happen. And this, of course, has its limits and limitations. And yeah, it sometimes it might work and give you that boost in income at the end of the year, but that may be the last boost you will see. And the next year is going to be a total collapse. So many companies get to this point where they stretched the limit of what they can earn, and the shareholders don't see it. The employees might not see it, but the company is already doomed. There is nothing really the directors can do except to wait for the inevitable end. And well, the truth is, because we were talking about companies being evil or not. Well, now I think you can see that it's not the case, not a case of companies being evil, but companies doing absolutely everything to save a buck, to earn more, because people in charge of the company need to operate like that. If they don't, they are exchanged for other people. So they have to squeeze every dollar from anything they do. And when they do so, they cannot think like, well, moral human beings. There's no morality here because if you're allowed to, let's say, poison the population of your local region and there's no consequences to that, and that gives you a profit, then you cannot not do it and stay in your position. They will simply find someone to replace you. That's it. So the system itself makes the big businesses do bad stuff, which means that we, assuming you're not an owner of a company, right, or one of the higher ups, you're just some person buys his or hers product at a store, a supermarket. You know, you drive a car, or you use a computer, right? You need to think about a company or all companies as not a moral bunch. Let's put it that way. immoral, perhaps. They will screw you over if they can. Okay, they will cheat you. They will poison you. That doesn't mean that they want to. Okay, that means that if they're allowed, that's what they would do. And if you're thinking about, well, maybe that already happened, think of the prophets. If you see that certain things that might have been intentional were profitable, if they amount to an increase of profits for a company, then it's quite possible that, yeah, that was intentional, whatever happened. And at the end, let me give you another real life example, and this time I'm going to be a little more specific. I'm going to talk about the Mexican Bay oil spill of 2010. In the Gulf of Mexico, BP, called British Petroleum, but actually that's not a proper name apparently, because they merged with another company and that somehow affected its name, but whatever. They were drilling for oil, and I heard reports that they had an enormous amount of drilling platforms around the world. I think 3,500. That's huge, you know. I don't know. Whatever the case, they had the right to drill, and they did. And as the later investigation showed, the precautions they took were not enough. Actually, they were minimal. Let's put it like that. And what happened is that they poked a hole in the um, bottom of the ocean, and oil started to leak from through it. And actually, there was an explosion on their oil rig, and it sank 2 days later. 11 people are presumed dead, never found actually. Um, but the thing is, the natural disaster, that's the biggest oil spill ever. Now, at least near the United States, but I think it's ever. That's the all times biggest. Now, what happened there, right? Well, everything I already mentioned. You see, they cut corners. They simply cut corners. I don't know if they overworked their employees, but an employee couldn't really say, guys, it doesn't look safe or something. Let's stop drilling. No, no, no. The oil must flow in big oil. That's all those oil companies, right? They don't stop for things like maybe there's some danger or something like that. If they would, their competition would get ahead of them, and they would lose their, well, not company, the management would get replaced. That's it. And then the new management would know that you need to cut those corners, damn it, and get more money, right? That's it. And the safety precautions, well, they were minimal, really. And there was a test of something, the pressure of the gas or something like that, and it was a failed test, which was ignored. When you hear about it, you think, what the hell? Did they want a catastrophe on their hands? Of course they didn't. They just probably did the same thing 100 or maybe 1,000 times before, and it always paid off. It's like gambling, really. You throw those dice and you hope that maybe you're not gonna go bankrupt yet. And of course, when the worst happened, the director then eventually left the company, but got, I think, 4 million for his troubles. And some people were outraged. What? They paid him that amount for, they blamed him for the spill. Well, maybe he was to blame. I'm not sure, but you see, he did what was expected of him. He was the guy who knew you gotta cut corners. You just have to be one step ahead of the competition. And that's exactly what he did. So when you look at his actions from the position of the shareholder, well, he did actually well because he tried to increase the stock value, tried his best, and he failed, right? And for us, mere humans not being the directors of the companies, well, that means, for example, if you live in the south of the United States, somewhere near the coast, that's a lot of oil that you know was everywhere. That's the effect, and that's just one very visible effect because every company out there has pretty much the same situation. Now, I can't tell you some miracle, some solution to this, some change that I could propose. Really, maybe something could be done, but how many rules you would put, they would still cut corners, just maybe in a small degree. You know, that's how our world works right now. That's how the situation is. I hope I didn't bring you down. So this was Voitos. I hope again this was informative. You liked it, and you know what to do in that case. So bye. See you next time.